Is anybody an Apple tech whiz?
What do you need?
So I got a HDMI cord going from a television screen, not a monitor, but a television, and then I got the adapter into my computer. Do you know how I get the Zoom meeting to show up on the television?
So you want a screen share from? So are you So are you on your So you're on your Mac? Okay. So
Yep.
go up to the yeah on your Mac.
So if I close my Mac, then everything appears on the big television thing, but I lose the camera.
So unplug it and go to the top right of your Mac, and you're gonna see. So you see Monday 528. You see
Yes.
your battery charger. You see your Wi-Fi icon. Then click on the one next to it on the left. Do you see that? It's kind of like a screen.
Yes.
Click that.
Open display is preferenced.
Yep. Try that. So I have mine set up already, and so let me think about that. No. Go to your TV, and it's a little bit. You might have to do like HDMI 1
Okay.
versus 2. It's a little bit. Do you have time for it?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want to try it?
I got all of 2 minutes.
Okay. So try to do.
Let me give it a whirl.
Trying to think of how you're gonna do this. Home screen. So does it say AirPlay 2, and does it give you any options? Or does it say AirPlay looking for TV?
Yeah. So I got the. Oh, I see.
So you kind of have to set it up, but if you have a newer TV, it should work.
Okay.
And that's how you would do it. You don't want to have a cable to it or anything. You just want to do the screen mirroring.
Oh, wait.
You got it?
I think
It
I'm
might give you like a code to put in on your phone or on your TV. But as long as it's a smart TV and it's recent, it should sync right up.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I got 11 of us. Who are we missing?
Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. I'm on a different computer tonight. It's about 1984 technology, so hopefully you guys can see me okay. Hopefully I look younger too if it's from 84.
I think Nate. Yep. Nate Fennessy.
Linda.
Linda Kennison. That's it.
1984 computer company Pac-Man.
No, but there's a DeLorean in his driveway.
So has anybody heard from Linda?
We're also missing Gail too, right?
I believe so.
Can people see me? I got the window in the back.
Yes.
I was trying to shake up the, the backdrop today.
You have a glow about you, but we see you.
Yeah, well, that's just,
It's quite botanical.
that's just the off the bald head is really what it is.
You going for the outdoor look with that tree?
Like that? We never got to celebrate Arbor Day, so.
Is that one of our city street trees, is it?
All right, just give it a couple more seconds here and we'll start on. So, Mr. Manager, did you confirm that we can keep moving? We don't have to wait till 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock?
I did.
And the answer would be?
Oh, the answer is yes. You can keep moving. You don't have to wait later.
So the question I asked the manager was, if you looked at the city website, it says we're meeting at 5:30, and then at 7 o'clock non-public, and then 8 o'clock we reconvene. So I just wanted to check with the solicitor that we don't have to wait till 8 o'clock to actually go back to that public session. We can kind of keep rolling. So we don't use up all the time. We can just keep going. I'll be right back. Okay, you guys want to get started? Just FYI, I brought snacks. We have carrots and celery in case anybody wants some.
Yes, please.
Linda? All right. So we're down to scale. So, welcome to our meeting of the Finance Committee. Wait, this was. Do you have the thing I'm supposed to read?
I believe it's on the agenda.
Brian has it.
Would you like me to read it, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Welcome to the May 2018-2020 electronic meeting of the Finance Committee. We are meeting electronically due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. Please note that in accordance with the Governor's emergency order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda on the City of Concord's website at https://concordnh.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the Finance Committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: https://web.zoom.us/j8905-324-1993. If any member of the public does not have website access, they may dial the telephone number 929-205-6099 and enter the webinar ID #890-5324 1993. We will not be using the chat function in Zoom for this meeting. Please note that testimony is only allowed for agenda items that have been scheduled for public hearing, and public participation is not authorized for other items on the agenda. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance.
Mr. Manager, if you call the roll, and if you state where you are, if anybody's in the room with you, please.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I'll call the roll since I have the sheets.
Sure, please.
Councillor Bouchard.
Here at
Mayor
home.
Goulet.
No one here.
Oh, sorry.
Here by myself.
Councillor Champlin.
Here at my home, I'm alone in this room.
Councillor Fennessy.
I am here in a room by myself at home.
Councillor Grady Sexton.
I'm here in a room by myself. My minor children are in another room.
Councillor Hatfield.
I'm here in a room in my home by myself.
Councillor Keach.
I'm here by myself in my home.
Councillor Kennison. Councillor Kennison. We'll take that as a yes.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kretovic.
Thank you. I'm here in the house by myself, though my husband may be coming in. His name is Bill Kretovic.
Councillor Mattson.
Hello, I'm here at my home. I'm alone in my room.
Councillor Nyan.
Present at home. Joe Nye and my son is present in the room.
Councillor Pierce.
Good evening. I am here alone in my home.
Councillor Rice Hawkins.
I am here alone in my room.
Councillor Todd.
Here at home alone in this room.
Councillor Werner.
I'm here, and my spouse, Mary Ann Gashnig, may enter the room.
All present.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so tonight, before the Finance Committee, we are going to hear a presentation from the manager on his overall budget presentation. We are going to talk about the schedule, and then it includes the first sections of the budget, including transmittal letter, budget summaries, resolutions, and the general fund revenue. Following that, we'll go into a non-public session, and then we'll come out for last-minute discussions and such. So, Mr. Manager, I'll turn it over to you. I hope you have as many pictures in this as you did in the transmittal letter.
I do, more actually. Thank you very much. What I'll be doing is I'll share my screen so that you can see the presentations that you normally would see as for the PowerPoint. Can I see that?
I do not.
It's coming. What you have it. I can bring it up.
You did the green share screen thing, right? Yes, no? You guys seeing it?
Nope.
Excellent.
Where's Eddie when you need him?
Using a different tool here.
He has it, he can share it. And then you just
Can you let me share that?
I can forward it to Carlos, or I can open, I have a
Why
sheet.
don't you open it? Yeah.
Did everybody have a good day today?
Busy.
Busy.
Enjoyed the sunshine, took a 4-mile walk. Great day.
Nice.
I provided my children with about 87 snacks today.
Where do I find start slicing?
You can put that down as distance learning at home under nutrition.
Like you're not hungry.
You mind, or?
I had about 15 snacks just myself today. Is that a good thing? Should I worry about that? Maybe I.
Was it carrots and celery?
You have to allow me to share. Yeah, so
That's a no.
Clearly.
because I'm not the host.
Sorry.
That's right.
There were plenty of people downtown at the restaurants today.
Yeah, I heard that. Nice.
Where were they?
Bubbles?
Yes. Yeah.
What restaurants?
Tandy's and Cheers seem to be the busiest.
Outdoor seating. Is that where they're, yeah, that's working.
Yeah.
Arlie House was trying to figure out their setup. And
Candy, what are the restaurants doing on the Heights?
Today it seemed, I came up this morning on Loudon Road and it looked like the Red Arrow had picnic tables out. I haven't gone up to the other ones yet, but it looks like they might be trying to do something outside. So we'll see.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Mayor, I still don't have the clappy hands on my.
All right, I just made you the host.
I'll wave.
The one to raise your hand?
Yeah.
Huh.
So click on
I don't
participants.
have it this time either.
Yeah, if you click on participants at the bottom, then it'll bring you up. It should show you a raise hand symbol.
It doesn't. Yeah, it used to once upon a time.
Yeah, I have mine.
Oh, wait, I think I found it. It's small print.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
you want to borrow these?
Yeah, thank you.
And give her a carrot.
Yeah. Oh, it's better all the time. Ooh.
We see it now.
Yay.
Yay.
Press play.
Did you put this to music?
Ooh.
So Brian's the host, so he has to share it. So we'll get started. So the everybody, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So before I get started, I want to let everybody know the presentation that you're seeing tonight is hosted on the city's website at concordnh.gov, so people can follow along at home exactly what's on the screen, if they would like. As stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, the city of Concord hopes you'll be able to find this document helpful. We plan to leave, so the council knows we plan to leave this up. And what we'll do is when you finally adopt a budget, we'll make the modifications to this document so it's accurate. So it'll be up there for year round for use. So as you can see, we still maintain a AA+ Standard & Poor's bond rating with a certificate of excellent achievements as 25 years. That is the longest running certificate of achievement for excellence in the state of New Hampshire. And the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award is the 5th year, and that's the highest award in governmental budgeting in the United States and Canada. And really, this is what this is based on, is a very strong institutional framework. For total budget overview, the proposed fiscal year 21 budget has a 0% increase proposed in taxes. And you'll see that looking at the FY20 adopted budget is 109.2 million. The FY21 proposed budget 106.5. It's a $2.7 million decrease from last year when you look at the full budget. You recall last year when we did the budget, we had a 1.92% adopted budget proposed increase. Actually, after all the value and growth that occurred in the city, just so the council is aware, and I know you know this, so the public's aware, that number was not 1.92%, it was 1.62%. So we did 0.3% better than what was approved in the budget. Looking at the percent value tax exempt for comparable cities in New Hampshire, and these are essentially the higher ones that have their values that are tax exempt. If you look at Concord, you can see we're at 26% of the total value of the community is tax exempt. In 2010, so if you go back 10 years, it was at 25%. Manchester was at 13%, Nashua was at 9%, and Portsmouth was at 12%. So those communities relatively stay the same. Concord fluctuates between about 25 and 29%. Right now we're at 26, so it's come down about 1% a year for the last several years, and it does that, and then eventually it'll go back up. However, it's imperative to keep this in mind when determining the budgets. When we put together the budget, recognizing the fact that 20%, 26% in this case of the community is tax exempt, the costs really do fall on the other property taxpayers who are not tax exempt. This is a look at our fund balance, and this is very important this year because we're using some of the fund balance to manage the budget. The unassigned fund balance, portion of the fund balance, that's the darker color at the bottom, represents a portion of the total fund balance that is spendable, not restricted for anything, and has not been committed or assigned for a specific purpose. Essentially, it's the funding that provides the city with the flexibility to deal with emergencies and other unanticipated events. The healthier the unassigned fund balance, the less the impact emergency has on our finances. So the unassigned fund balance is the balance that the rating agencies also use as key benchmarks to assess the city's financial health. In December 2019, Standard & Poor's affirmed the rating of AA+, which is a half a notch, I know you know this, half a notch below the AAA rating. It's a very commendable achievement for the city and a testament to the City Council's budgeting over all these years. Specific comments that S&P made as part of their finding are, and I quote, very strong budgetary flexibility, strong financial management policies and procedures, strong budgetary performance, very strong liquidity, and very strong institutional framework score. The Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee of the City Council has maintained the general fund balance goal of 18.5%, which has been more than achieved. This will enable the city to maintain a strong fiscal health and meet emergencies as we need, as they arise, as we find ourselves today. Looking at the next piece of information, motor vehicle registrations are the second highest revenue source for us. So for fiscal year 21, we're budgeting, proposing to budget $7 million. Motor vehicle registration revenue is a very important source, and the 2021 number will be lower than the other numbers since 2017. So you can see it started to climb, and really this year's our estimate is down from 2019's actual, and we project that to pretty much stabilize for 2021. Looking at rooms and meals tax for this year, we're budgeting at $2,185,000. These funds are collected by the state and for the cities in the community, and for us, and for most communities, it's stayed the same since 2017. Essentially, that is a flat line. But we're looking at closely for any changes from the state. Of course, remembering that this is a budgeted number, it will take some time for the lack of room and meal tax collections to work its way through the state's revenue sources, and then eventually, I think it'll impact us. Looking at the next source, highway block grant funds. For highway block grants for 2021, we're budgeting $909,730. Again, a flat. This is a number we're going to really have to keep our eye on based on the lack of revenues from primarily the gas tax. So as less people are driving, less tax are being collected. The state and the feds have the ability to stabilize this number, but the question is, will they? And again, this is for all communities. They're all going to have to watch the same thing. And looking at the next item, interest income, you can see from 2017 to 2019, we were seeing some healthy growth. That approaching the $1 million figure, that was probably about half of what we were receiving before the Great Recession. So one of these things, this rises and falls with the federal rates. In 2019, we're approximately that number is $896,000, and we're projecting $390,000 for 2021. And we're not even sure if we're going to reach that based on what's going on with the Fed funds rate. Looking at a total budget overview. So this is an important chart, which simply shows you that it is not all just about the general fund. The general fund obviously impacts the tax rate. You have the capital budget at $10.8 million, and of course everything from the arena at about $700,000 to solid waste at almost $5 million, to wastewater and water and airport. So these are a total look at the whole budget and see how it balances out together. The $2.7 million is a decrease from the FY20 budget. So this pie chart would be $2.7 million larger, so to speak, in comparison, if you compared it to last year's number. Looking at property tax rates, you see the county and the city numbers are the same. The school number is where the difference is, and you have a $27.78 rate for Concord and a $34.10 rate for Petticook, and the city share, in this case, under the proposed budget, would not change. If you want to go back a little bit and look at 10 years ago, what this was, the school rate in the Concord School District represented 53% of someone's taxes. It now represents 55% of someone's taxes. So when somebody writes their tax bill, 53% used to go to the school district. Now it's up to 55%. So it's relatively the same. That's not the case in the Merrimack Valley School District. If you go back to 2010, that number was about 58% of someone's tax bill. It is now 63% of someone's tax bill. Looking at what do city taxes pay for, you can see it's primarily four areas: fire department, the police department, general service department, and paying for debt. So if you took all the money that was collected through property taxes, these are the services that were paid for, and all the other services would be paid for through other revenue sources. This amounts to $42,194,952 just for these four sources. Looking at the next chart, this is now just looking at the general fund overview, and you can see this has the general government, public safety, which represents police and fire. So police and fire are 41% of the total budgetary cost. General government, well, I'll leave that to the end. General services, 15%. Community development is 5%. Leisure, so that would be the library and the Parks and Recreation and Information Services represent 7%. 1% is health and human services, and everything else is 31%. So that'd be everything from assessing to the clerk's office to legal department to my office represents 31%. This represents $68 million, almost $68.5 million. General fund overview. This is another way of looking at the same amount of dollars, but where those dollars go. So as you know, being basically a service organization, compensation and benefits. Compensation represents 45%, benefits 27%, and look at outside services, supplies, transfers, miscellaneous, debt services, that other a large piece of the pie at 11%. Okay, the next piece. So what is driving the comparison to changes from fiscal year 21 coming out of fiscal year 20? And really there's 4 pieces here that you need to really keep an eye on. Wages is $610,000. So recall we've entered into new wage agreements with 5 different unions, and along with them comes wages and benefits. You recall last year when we negotiated our health insurance benefits, we had a negative 2% change in our health insurance costs last year. It is up 3.25% this year. So I'll go through some of these numbers. So with no change in the tax rate generates no additional revenue, everything else being equal. You'll want to know that if a 1 cent change in tax rate equals $43,770. So if you were to raise taxes by 1%, you would generate $427,620. You have that sheet in your budget. The City Council, as I mentioned, settled on 5 of the 6 contracts, and those costs are seen in these wages and benefit lines. The cost for the new IAFF contract will be in the compensation budget, which we'll talk about later. Debt service is up, and we'll talk about that in a few slides. And we're proposing to appropriate $1.5 million in the unassigned fund balance, which I talked about earlier, which is really set aside for situations just like this. And that way, if you were able to do that, if you decide to do that, you do not need to increase property taxes on anybody. Looking at notable items in the budget for fiscal year 21, I'll jump around a little bit here. The 8.25% over on the right-hand side of the slide at the top, that's the wastewater rate increase, and essentially driven by the new PFAS regulations. So what does that equal? What's 8.25% rate increases? $3.31 a month for the average resident. So the average resident for over a year would be $39.72 increase with 8.25%. That's the same number as we discussed last year, but there's no surprise that that's coming this year. The new fire engine, which is $695,000, that replaces the engine 4. And for fire engines, we generally keep them 8 years on frontline service and 8 years on reserve, a total of 16 years, and it's time to move this one to reserve. For the police cruisers, we usually put in the marked fleet for 3 years and then a transfer to the unmarked fleet for 2 years. So it's time to buy, which is what we do every year. We do 4 new police cruisers. Pay as you throw. There's no rate proposed to increase. The containerized service rate is not proposed to increase, and we'll continue with the current recycling program. And as far as water rates are not proposed to increase this year. And we did not increase them last year, as you recall. However, next year you will have to do this if you decide you want to keep a first-class plant and a first-class distribution system. In regards to social services funding, they're all funded in accordance with the council decisions you made last year, and they're all level funded. Mentioned earlier a discussion about debt service. This is decisions that you made in the fiscal year 20 budget, and now the bills need to be paid for those for the next several years. Public safety, if you look at all the public safety purchases, it's $186,000 in additional cost for this year. Stormwater improvements at $70,000. So thank Kimball Jenkins. I said thank you, not thank. Golf course grounds improvements, $45,000, and general vehicle and equipment replacement, $88,000. So if you really look at those are the $390,000 increase that you now experience in fiscal year 21 budget for debt service increases. Looking at your paving program, fiscal year 21 is a $2.2 million proposed increase. That's budget. That's a $162,000 increase in the paving capital improvement program. Last year, this current year that we're in, the fiscal year 20, we spent $4 million. So we started off with $2.1 million. We had added $1.0 million supplemental in July, another $749,000 in March, and another $187,000 you just approved at your May meeting. So that came to $4 million. So essentially you doubled what you originally set out to do for paving. And the proposal is to do another $2.2 million this year. The annual transfer from the general fund to the highway reserve is how that gets funded in the general fund. So in fiscal year 20, it was $1.2 million. We're proposing to increase that to $1.3 million. This is a $113,000 increase. You recall we're still on the neighborhood street paving program tax rate increase. This year we propose a 0.25% increase. However, that balances off with decreases in other places, which is why we've been able to achieve a 0% tax rate increase. Looking at some of the major capital improvement programs, I'll go through these briefly because we'll be talking. We have a whole section of the budget to discuss these, but these are, I think, some of the ones you'd be most interested in. The sewer pump station is construction of the Hannah Dustin pump station, which is up on appropriately Hannah Dustin Drive or Avenue Drive. And these come out of the sewer funds. So this is up right by Whitney Road and to handle the sewer up in that area. The Petticoat Riverfront Park, that's $1.4 million. That's for the design, permitting, construction of a new riverfront park on 1.5 acres set aside on Canal Street. Included in this project is reconstruction and expansion of the Canal Street Municipal Parking Lot. Funding is proposed to come from the Pennacook Tax Increment Financing District and Tax Increment Financing Funds. The funds are not requested as to be appropriated this time as part of this budget proposal. So they're not included in the budget, but they are included in the capital improvement plan. The North Main Street, Store Street intersection, $371,000. The final design and construction of the intersection improvements. This project is proposed to be funded with tax impact fees and general fund bonds. So it's $200,000 in bonds, the rest in impact fees. The funds are not proposed to be appropriated this time due to necessary coordination with the Store Street North project, which we'll talk about in a minute. General Services Vehicle Replacement Program, there are two funding sources, the General Fund and the Water Fund, proposed to be used to replace 14 pieces of equipment. And this ranges from dump trucks to a backhoe to a welding unit. The Washington Street Bridge up in Pennacook, this present structure and the bearings are in need of repair. The funding would be provided from general obligation bonds and capital closeout costs. That's $848,000. The citywide recreational facility improvements, $860,000, includes funding for the replacement of the Mill Park Pool. That's $550,000, and replacement of the slate roof at the West Street Ward House. It includes repair and replacement of 15 rafters, additional underlayment, chimney work, and lead paint abatement. Funds are not proposed to be appropriate at this time as part of the budget proposal. The water main replacement down on the bottom left-hand side, $798,000, is for the design and replacement of 1,500 linear feet of 6-inch water main off Joffrey Street and 800 linear feet of sleeved 2-inch main off Wigan Street. This is in anticipation of future paving. Parking meters, replace 85 kiosk units and replace all the remaining mechanical single space meters with single electronic space smart meters. There's 270 of those. Funding would come from the parking fund, but is not proposed to be appropriated at this time as part of the budget because we'll have to see how the parking fund does throughout the year. The Store Street North project is construction of the Store Street extension from the current north end of Store Street at Holiday Inn to Constitution Drive. Constitution Avenue. This includes the design, permitting, railroad improvements, construction of 1,500 linear feet of 8-inch water main from Constitution Avenue to Store Street, and the construction of 2,500 linear feet of 12-inch sewer main from I-393 to Commercial Street. The funding source is the Neoctif district, and the funds are not appropriated as part of this budget proposal. As City Council is aware, there is a separate process for modifying the TIF district to undertake this project. Looking at safeguarding our city organization from COVID, the city's been following the CDC and state of New Hampshire health guidelines. We're using personal protective equipment, following all the safety of business protocols that are out there, retrofitting public spaces as we talk, and the increased monitoring of city revenues to hopefully offset with outside funding from the federal government. Looking at sustainability initiatives going forward, the solar array at Hall Street wastewater treatment plant, that is construction of less than 500 kilowatt array that will cover 15 to 20% of the electric load of the plant. Additional solar work could be installed if state policy is modified. The water and wastewater energy improvements. In wastewater, we've upgraded the exterior lighting, installed energy savings and variable speed drives on equipment. In water, we've installed energy saving efficiency pumps at pump station number 5. That's the one down at Broad Cove Drive. And we will see reduced energy savings going forward. So that's why that will keep paying off for us in future years. The LED street lighting, the city has entered in a memorandum of understanding with Unitil relative to the petition to the Public Utilities Commission to provide a 0% loan on the city in excess of $150,000 to support the replacement of the city's existing outdoor street lights with LED lights. As anticipated, that the date for the installation will be, completion of the date of installation will be the end of this calendar year. And finally, the sustainability fellow, the work plan includes a greenhouse gas inventory for municipal government and certain aspects of the community, so we can discuss reducing emissions. Looking at the next piece, the Concord at a glance. Again, this is for the document that will be on the permanent web. As you know, we have 80 miles of trails which are being heavily used. We're up to 56,000 calls for service and response. With the police department, we have 220 miles of road we're maintaining. Circulation at the library is over 300,000. We have 230 acres of parks to improve, and we have, this is just a couple of recent awards that we've just received. Looking forward, I think one of the items that I can use to conclude this presentation, which I try to keep brief so we can get into the other sections of the budget. I'll leave you with a quote from John Lewis Gaddis, and that is, assuming sustainability is one of the ways ruins get made. Resilience accommodates the unexpected. So the city of Concord, this organization, is most resilient, and our best is yet to come. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Is it Mayor?
Thank you, Tom.
I'm going to unshare.
Would you mind bringing the screen? There we go. Thank you. So I appreciate the presentation. Who has questions for the men? Council Bouchard, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager, do you expect our Health and Human Service budget to greatly increase as more people seek help?
We do, but I don't think greatly increase in terms of tax impact. We've seen it going down over the last several years, just bit by bit. Karen, our director, has been able to make good relationships with a lot of folks to help us out. We believe also there'll be offsetting dollars coming in to offset some of our costs. So we have not had to budget too much in additional dollars to handle that. But you will see there's only really two places where staffing has changed in the budget. One is the police department and the position that you added halfway through the year for a deputy chief's position, and additional hours in the human services department to handle the caseload that will increase. But I believe we can handle it with the existing budget, as we always have. And you'll recall, Mayor Pro Tem, you have in the past, which I think you were one of the authors of, we created a council contingency item, or there's a contingency budget, which will handle events like that if we needed to have additional dollars.
Thank you.
Councilor Hapton?
Thank you, and thank you for a very good presentation. I have a similar question to Councilor Bouchard, sort of following up on that. How have you approached trying to estimate, if that's even possible, future federal funding related to COVID that might be helpful to offset some of the city's costs?
There's been a number of pieces that have come down. As you know, I think you all know, the city's eligible for $1 million. Again, that's reimbursable. So we've been keeping track of all of that since beginning of March, essentially, and different pieces of that. We think between all the programs that are out there, we'll be able to tap into different pieces for that. Again, it's reimbursable. So, but it seems to be, the system seems to be in place where it is something we should be able to get back pretty quickly. I think you can see that with the number of grants that we've been able to receive through the police and fire departments over the last few months. Those, of course, were the first ones out of the gate, and I think there'll be a few more on your agenda by the time we finish putting that together for the next month. So I don't see any issue with that. Also working on other levels in other departments, and we actually have, I think it's 6 teams, if I can't remember, it's 5 or 6 teams working on this for all different aspects of the organization to make sure that we can tap into those funds. Carlos has in his office a staff person specifically assigned just to do that, working with other teams throughout the organization to do that. Police and fire are very much used to doing this because there's a lot of formula grants out there for this, and they've been supplemented. It's just bringing everybody else up to speed on how to tap into those funds.
You all set, Councilor? So as a follow-up to that, then, the first round of invoices that we submit to the state is June 1st, so we're only a couple weeks away, and any money received from that billing will go to the current fiscal year. Do you have any idea how much we'll be seeking for reimbursement that will be included for our current fiscal year?
So I do think it's going to be several $100,000. I anticipate that after the fiscal year has ended, that we'll come back to you with a supplemental appropriation that would be retroactive to June 30th. And it's really going to be dependent on the funds that the manager just spoke about. We also have the first responder $300 per week amount that we have to that we're going to have a supplemental appropriation on as well too. So there's going to be a number of different buckets that we're going to have to add up, but I anticipate it to be several $100,000.
So potentially we're not going to see a deficit in the current fiscal year then?
I mean, that's hopefully, it really is going to be dependent on where the other revenue lines come in. What is motor vehicle registration going to do? Where will we end up with interest income? I think we have a couple of lines there. Other than those things, I feel pretty good about where we're at as far as revenues go. Fortunately, this happened closer to the end of the fiscal year than the beginning. So I think for fiscal year 20, we'll be in reasonably good shape. I'll be providing you with an updated projection for the general fund at the next city council meeting. So hopefully we'll be pretty close one way or the other.
Great, thank you. Councilor Fennessy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the city manager. I'm curious what assumptions are built into this budget with respect to the resumption of, I'll call it, full-time activities at the city with respect to Parks and Recreation and, you know, other operations?
Within the budget, trying to give you as much flexibility as possible. We have budgeted for all the staffing. There are 3 positions in the organization, which we've only budgeted for half the year, because I think even if you approve them, by the time we went out, things opened up. We could do interviewing, processing, people go from one job to another. It probably wouldn't be till the middle of the year anyways. So that gives you the full flexibility of hiring. We have budgeted for example, all the programming that needs to take place based on what program I think can take place for the rest of the year. For Parks and Recreation, we're budgeted for all 7 pools to be open. However, I do not believe that will happen because we will not be able to find enough lifeguards to fill those positions. So we'll be talking about that as we get to the Park and Recreation budget. So I think you'll have the maximum flexibility, but you will not be able to have all the same services that you have in the past, just because other supporting pieces are not out there they are in the organization, but they aren't in the rest of the world. You'll be able to do a lot of things. So to give you an example, I talked to the mayor earlier today. You know, we have budgeted, the money is in there for the fireworks. That's $30,000. Will you have fireworks this year? Probably not. Not during July 4th. Could you have something at the end of the year or somewhere else in the year? Yes, you could. But that's a decision you'll have to make. So everything pretty much that you've had in the previous budgets or in this budget. And if it isn't, I've already called it out now, and I will call it out as we go through each department as we go forward, so you'll know exactly what the changes are.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Please.
Thank you. So would it be fair to say, based on that, that you might have an expectation that we may not need to use all of the unreserved fund balance that you've budgeted?
There is, I think it's one way to look at it would be, you'd probably use it because you budgeted for it. But the idea would be you would have money left at the end of the year, which you could then hopefully put back in to the reserve. And that's what you've done over all these years, is you've taken money through the surpluses. You've had $1 million surpluses for many years in a row or close to it. And you've taken those dollars and put it into highway reserve, then take it out of highway reserve to do paving, or you've taken and put it into overlay, or you've done a lot of different things with it. Which is why I think we will have to manage this budget, hoping to create those types of surpluses as we go forward. But I think a lot of that's really going to be driven by the revenue sources that I talked about earlier, keeping an eye on each one of those and all the ones that, in the past, if interest income had overperformed, that would be one source, so to speak. Well, it's probably going to underperform, so we're going to have to work to make sure that doesn't hamstring us in any way.
Thank you. Meredith, did you have? I'm sorry. No? Okay. So, Mr. Manager, so one of the things that you talked about in your transmittal letter was the, kind of the best guesses you possibly could make when it came to property tax collections. And then you talked about it tonight, the rooms and meals tax, highway block grant, motor vehicle registrations, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about your approach in terms of moving forward, say in October, November, and such?
Sure. So the way we put this budget together is try to be as flexible and so that we can pivot depending on what happens. You're really going to have some milestones coming up, which I think are very important. You had one which we passed recently, which was the end of the March tax collection. Well, that was, as you can tell, I think we were off by 1% about where we typically are. So that one went pretty well. But that was, for us, that was expected to go well because the economic impacts that we've seen really just starting to take hold at the end of March. One of the telling ones will be the end of June tax collection in terms of which types of, how much actually is, what percent is collected. As you know, we do have regular payments we make to both of the school districts. And in December, we make a large payment to Merrimack County. So we have our bills to pay. So that will be really a cash flow issue. So we have, again, the end of June. We also have in September and October, that area there, we'll have another tax collection date. We'll also be finding out rooms and meals tax and most likely highway block grant dollars. So if you were not to receive the highway block grant dollars, or that was to be really reduced dramatically, that's, could you slow down the highway paving program? You could. You don't want to, but you could, and that wouldn't be the worst thing to do for 1 year. But I think those are the things we're going to have to look at. When we look at the interest income, if the federal funds rate, they're talking about potentially negative rates here. How does that affect us? And where years ago, if you look back at prior Great Recession, the mayor and I and others would talk about, boy, that that number would range anywhere between $1 million to almost $2 million. Now we're talking $390,000. That's a big change. You talk about motor vehicle registration. What's going to happen with the car industry? How is that changing? There's so many pieces like that. So, but each one of those we'll be able to, for vehicle registration, you can look at that monthly. And that's the thing. I think it's going to be very important for the Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee to meet on a regular basis, to review these numbers, and obviously bring that forward to the full council. But I think the Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee will have enough information, enough time in advance to be able to make any important decisions that you need to make so that the taxpayer isn't negatively impacted.
Council Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Manager, in the event of layoffs, which we saw back in 2008, it was a bit of an ugly time, obviously, but can you remind me, are layoffs contractually regulated based on the union agreements for the most part?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Ms. Manager, do you want to talk about some of those other pieces?
I'd be glad. So would you like to, Mr. Mayor, would you like to do the schedule at the end?
I'll tell you what, why don't we try talking about it now? How's that? So I asked you all, I think at the last meeting, to think about the scheduling and such, and to see, kind of where you wanted to be. And here's my sharing a screen. Okay, it's my share a screen. Anyway, so I took a look at the calendar and all the other city committees and when they were meeting, as well as including Memorial Day and such. And I think based upon the schedule, if we make some minor adjustments, we could stick to a lot of the same schedule. So here's what I was suggesting is this. In the past, our rules require us to hold a public hearing and a tentative vote after each section of the budget. And as you know, with the Zoom meetings, it takes for a mighty long time and it kind of slows down the whole process. So what I was thinking, for terms of efficiency, maybe we go ahead, keep with the same schedule, and take out all the different departments and such. Don't hold any public hearings and hold no tentative votes. But on June 4th, which was originally slated to be our committee work sessions and then budget adoption that night, that we don't do the budget adoption that night, but we hold the public hearing and give the public the opportunity to talk about any and all portions of the budget after they've heard all the presentations, and they can come and share any kind of thought they want to. And that way, they don't have, if they miss the meeting on the 21st and they really want to talk about the manager's budget and they weren't able to make it, they'll still have an opportunity on the 4th to talk about before we make any changes. So that night on the 4th, we could listen to public testimony about the manager's proposal. And then we have a regular city council meeting on June 8th. which is also a great day in Councilor Grady Sexton's life. And then on Thursday, the 11th, we don't have anything scheduled at that point. And what I was suggesting is that maybe we hold our final budget adoption on the 11th. So that would, and I apologize, on the 4th, not only hold the tentative, hold the hearing on the proposed budget, but then we do our work session that night. And that way it gives the community a week to kind of think about the changes that we're considering, or at least we're talking about. And obviously it doesn't preclude us from doing the changes anything further on the 11th, but at least we're giving notice to the public of some of the things we're considering. And then on the 11th, we hold the final budget adoption vote. So that was a long way of saying, stick with the existing schedule, eliminate the budget adoption on the 4th, but do hold the public hearing on the proposal, and then hold the final budget hearing on the 11th. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
This is Council, and I think it's a great idea. Schedule certainly works. So I'm in agreement. I think it actually affords a lot of opportunity for input.
I also agree, and I'd like to note that June 8th is also the mayor's birthday. So if city staff would like to arrange a birthday parade with cruisers and some fire engines, it might be in order.
Yeah. Councilor, I don't know what to say. Councilor Credit.
Happy birthday, Your Honor, early. I would recommend maybe perhaps holding one additional meeting night as reserve in the event that we have something that comes from the legislature or from anywhere that may delay our schedule.
I really appreciate you saying that. I actually met with the Speaker of the House this morning, and I've had conversations with the Senate President, and I believe other councilors have as well. And we're all kind of getting the same feeling, and that they're going to take the month of June to pretty much wrap things up. I don't think you're going to see anything significant. Probably the most important thing that we'll have to watch is what the manager referred to earlier, and I think Council Hatfield talked about, and that is tapping into all those federal dollars to make sure we're being reimbursed. So I don't know that there's going to be any magic before the 30th that we have to wait for, like we do in past years. But if somebody else has other information, I welcome it.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
This is Councilor Pierce. I was wondering, with that schedule that you laid out, there was one opportunity for public hearing and public comment, or were there two?
There are two, so it'd be on the 4th and the 11th.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, on June 11th, I most likely will be absent.
Okay. We could push it out till the following Monday, the 15th, and not do it on the 11th.
That works for me, but yeah, I don't know about everybody else's schedule.
Councilor Rice Hopkins.
I also have a conflict that evening, so if it is mutual conflict, it'd be great to move it.
Would anybody be opposed just to move it to the 15th? We typically have meetings on Mondays anyway, so it's Councilor Knight.
Yes, sure. All I was going to say is that's normally our FPAC meeting, and whereas we're meeting as a full FPAC, then certainly works.
Okay. Councilor Champlin, I'm sorry, I think you were trying to speak.
Same thing.
I'm sorry, one more time.
I'm sorry. My thinking was along the lines of Councilor Nyans, but obviously he's the chairman of FPAC, so he covered the base. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, would somebody willing to make a motion to change the rules to basically it'd be no tentative votes after the budget presentations each night. to hold one public hearing on all budgets as proposed by the manager on the 4th, and then move the budget adoption night until the Monday, the 15th of June.
Counselor Kretovic moves.
Second.
Hatfield seconds.
Thank you very much. We have a motion that's been made and seconded. Mr. LeBron, could you please call the roll, please?
I would be glad to.
Question first.
I'm sorry, absolutely. Mr. Fennessy.
Sure. Would we be having a meeting then at all, a work session or anything on the 11th, or that would just be off at that point?
No, it would be a day off. Any further questions? Okay, Mr. LeBron?
Counselor Fennessy,
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton,
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield,
Yes.
Counselor Keach,
Yes.
Counselor Kennison,
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic,
Yes.
Counselor Matson,
Yes.
Counselor Nyan,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
Counselor Werner,
Yes.
Counselor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Yes.
Counselor Champlin.
Yes.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Manager, will you see that that's reflected on the city website? You can just nod yes if you wish.
I had my volume up so we wouldn't get the feedback.
Gotcha. So you'll change the city website to make sure it reflects? Okay, great. So where would you like to go now, Mr. Manager?
Well, if you, on your agenda, you have agenda item number 4, which you just primarily took care of, which was the meeting schedule. We talked about the transmittal letter and the budget and brief. So the next item would be item number 5 on your budget, on your agenda. And the first attachment is for the budget summaries and staff listings. So you'd want to start on page 26 of your budget. I'll give you a second to get there. So starting on page, everybody pretty much there, you think? So starting on there, pages 26 through 31, that provides for the revenue and expense summaries of each of the funds by function and then classification. So as you can see on the very right-hand bottom of page 27, the total expense budget for all funds, including capital, is $106,551,695. That's the number that's $2.7 million less than last year's budget that was adopted essentially at this time. If you look at it and compare to what was what's been appropriated for fiscal year 20 so far, where that when you adopt this, if you were to adopt this budget as proposed, that's actually $5.5 million less than what you would have approved or have approved so far in the fiscal year 20 budget, which includes the supplemental appropriations you've made throughout the year. So sometimes as the year goes on, you'll add things. So for example, you'll recall when we received the grant from the state for additional road paving, you appropriate those dollars as a revenue coming in. It's expense going out, so you appropriate those dollars. That increases the overall budget cost. So I will go over the budget to budget changes in more detail as we go through each of the sections the next few weeks. Next, we want to look at the staffing pieces here on page 32 through 41. And again, people can follow this at home. The budget is all online. That provides city staffing by department. Only one significant change in staffing. In January, the City Council received a report and presentation by the Chief of Police to reorganize the police department, and we added one deputy police chief position. That is now being budgeted for and is reflected in this budget. At the bottom of page 39, the budget proposes a total of 475.99 full-time equivalent positions, which is up from 474.92 FTEs from fiscal year 2020. There's an increase of 1.07 employees, which is the deputy chief position, which I mentioned, and a small change in hours in a few of the departments. That's the essentially the 0.07. Now, if you go to page 40, the city has a total of 505 unique full and part-time positions that make up that 475.99 FTEs. Summary of the staffing changes for fiscal year 21 is there. Next is on page 41. The top of this page, you'll see a graph of staffing by fund. The next section is temporary staff, full-time equivalents by department, and there's a total of 32.65 positions. The bottom of the page is the number of unique temporary staff. Put them for a total of 271 for fiscal year 2021, because you can see there's many, many positions, particularly when you look at elections and golf and park and recreation. Now you want to go to the next attachment on this agenda, which is, so if you go to the agenda, you'll see an attachment, budget resolutions. And you want to start on page 42. If you go to the far right side of this page, everybody, I'll wait, give everybody a minute to get there. There's a column titled Fiscal Year 21 Manager Proposed. The one that you have probably says adopted. That's not correct. It's you received a new one that says proposed, because you haven't adopted it yet, obviously. The total general fund budget is $68.4 million, or an increase of $1.9 million over fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. That's a 2.8% spending increase. The spending increase includes the second year of the one-time state funds in the amount of $749,000, and we are transferring $486,000 of this amount to paving. This transfer contributes to the year-over-year increase in spending. So again, if money comes into the state, gets put in as an increase in spending, but also an offsetting increase in revenue. Remaining $263,000 is being used to help offset other budget increases. Without this $486,000 transfer, the year-over-year increase would be 2.1%. There's also war service credits and overlay remain the same for 2021 as they did for 2020. The total use of funds, including war service credits and overlay, is $69 million. All of the revenues total $26.2 million, which is an increase of $1.6 million. This includes the second year of the one-time state revenue of $749,000 from the state. All other revenues are down $700,000. The amount to raise in taxes is $42.8 million. It's an increase of $171,000 over fiscal year 2020, and still a 0% increase rate in the taxes. This is because of real growth that is projected in the April 1 property valuation. So based on new growth that has occurred, you're able to spend a little bit more money without increasing taxes. The anticipated assessed value before any market change is $4.4 billion. This includes an estimated $33 million in new assessed value or new real growth. You'll hear it called both terms. The estimated city portion of the tax rate is $9.77, which is no increase from the current rate. And the remaining pages, 43 through 45, that you have in front of you, in this section of the resolutions for the operating and capital budgets that you'll be considering at the end of the budget process. The last section for this evening is the general fund revenue, starting on page 46. So again, I'll highlight several large revenue items that we have to pay extra attention to this year. On page 47, property taxes. We'll have to watch delinquencies very closely and monitor the impact of cash flows and tax revenues. Rooms and meals tax, that's under the intergov revenue section, and that we'll be waiting for information from the state likely in September on that. On page 48, you have investment income. That's the second section. The revenue will continue trending down, and now there's a discussion, as I mentioned, the Federal Reserve's about a negative Fed funds rate. The use of fund balance, which is second to last item. That's the first time we've used fund balance in a decade. And motor vehicle registration is the last item. We'll have to continue to focus on that. On page 49 is another large revenue source, which is ambulance charges. It's about 3/4 of the way down the page. You'll have to watch that closely. We think this line will be maintained for the fiscal year. We'll be okay there. A few additional notes on the general fund. As budgeted for fiscal year 21, fringe benefit cost increases, that was up by 2.2% or $385,000. So our health insurance rate for our active employees increased by 3.25%. We've implemented high deductible plans with projected savings in future years. So you recall when you did the contracts, there's an increase this year, and there should be significant savings in future years as we get closer to the about 2 years out. Overall, retirement rates remain the same for fiscal year 21. We're in the second year of the state's biennium budget. Property, liability, and auto insurance costs decreased by 3%, or the equivalent of about $14,000. Unemployment insurance costs decreased by 7.7%, or $1,700. And workers' comp costs increased by 6.6%, or $41,000. On the bottom of page 52, that shows a 10-year fund balance history through 2019 with an unassigned fund balance of $11.8 million, or 19% of expenses. This is ahead of the City Council's goal of 18.5%. City remains in a very strong financial position, which is being tapped in to balance the fiscal year 21 budget. This concludes tonight's presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Who has questions?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Quick question for the city manager. With these revenues, as we're incurring expenses this year, in this budget year, and we'll likely get reimbursement next budget year, what's the bookkeeping mechanism to reconcile those?
Excuse me.
Yeah, so we apologize for the distraction. We basically look at the dollars that are coming in or the expenses that we have sending out, and then we do the supplemental appropriation for those dollars, which the council would have to approve. Typically, we do it after the fact and make it subsequent to June 30th so that it's reflected in the FY20 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Council Chaplin.
Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, what strategy? I know that you are forward thinking. I know that you're looking at all contingencies. What possible strategies do you have in mind if some of these major revenue sources underperform as our expectations or your projections, rather?
Well, what we've done is the way the budget's constructed, we would be able to, based on input from City Council, if you determine what services you believe are vital and which ones are less vital, we'll be able to shut down certain sections of city services. So we have the way this is set up is we've identified positions, we've identified service levels that we'd like to be able to do. We did this when we went through the last Great Recession, and we were able to cut back in certain areas. When we get, you'll see some of those when we talk about in the next comp adjustment section of the budget. You'll see what some of those strategies are. One of the things that I think is most telling, this will unfold relatively slowly. And we should be able to make decisions, I should be able to come back to City Council, ask you for your input on what services you would like to reduce or eliminate, and then get that feedback and give you options in terms of what type of cost savings would be associated with that. So it's a combination of looking at what those impacts are, what type of reimbursements would come in. And really, when we look at most of because a lot of the revenues that were received over the years have been stripped away by state government to begin with, there's really not a whole lot of other money that comes down that we count on from the state. So we've been used to dealing on our own for the most part for quite some time. So we're able to I think manage that in an appropriate fashion. We'll have time to make the decisions we need to do without major disruptions to the community, I think.
Thanks so much for that response. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilor Fennessy?
Thank you, Mr. Bear. So kind of a follow-up question on that. So we know the checkpoint with respect to property taxes. Do we have other checkpoints that you have at least in mind with respect to the other revenue sources?
Sure. So well, on a monthly basis, you'll be able to look at motor vehicle registrations. We look at ambulance fees coming in, another major source. Again, in September, you'll be able to know what's coming down for rooms and meals tax. And again, that's, that 1.5% to 2% impact on the budget is significant. So if the money doesn't come in or comes in a different way, will it be made up eventually? So I think a lot of this has to do, at least initially from what we're seeing right now, will have to do with our cash flow issue and making sure that we have the dollars that are coming in so that we're able to take care of the school districts and take care of the county and make sure that they get the funds that they need to operate. Again, based on the reserves that you have in place and that you've set up, we've already anticipated, I think that if I recall the number was $700,000 less in revenue coming in. So when we built this budget, we considered the fact that there was going to be dramatically less revenue coming in this year in many areas than there have been in previous years. So we've built that into the budget already.
Thank you, Councilor Carter.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. City Manager, at the end of your presentation, you provided a quote with regards to sustainability of the city can sometimes lead to ruin. So in this conversation that we're having now, I think the taxpayer is hoping for some assurances that we'll have flexibility. But in my own mind, I'm thinking you must know there are certain changes that we will make that will have a detrimental effect to us in the future based upon your quote. And at the same time, there are other items that we could easily set aside as an inconvenience for this year, but it would be a tax saving measure for the community. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think that's why you see, particularly when you get to the capital budget, there are things that I think you're going to want to at a certain signpost along the way in terms of revenues coming in and the community getting back to the strength that it was at. You'll be able to make decisions of whether or not to move forward or not move forward with certain new things. There's different ways to pay for things. There's grants. There's also tax increment financing districts. There's impact fees. There's some things you want to do. But at this point, and you could probably go forward and do those now, and it would be responsible to do those. But why do them if you can wait? If you can wait and take a more cautious approach and make sure that in case you needed those dollars or those other reserves for something else, it'd be available for you. It doesn't hurt, just as you said, Councilor Fredovic, it doesn't hurt to wait a little bit, take your time, make sure that you're when you jump off to the next piece that you're going to be on solid ground. And you have the time to do that. You've built that resiliency into your fund balance and into the budgets, into the services that you have, that you can take that time and make sure. But what is proposed to you to be adopted will provide all the same services that you've wanted in the past and people have asked you for in the past. But if you know as you're going through the budget that you don't want those services anymore, there's something else you don't want to do, or if the community contacts you in some way and says, hey, we've enjoyed that all these years, but we don't need it anymore, then we should have that discussion. I'm not hearing that. I think people want more paving. People like to have their streets lined. People like to have their trash pickup. People like to have recycling. They want to see all these services that you've been able to provide them continue. But if we have to have those difficult conversations, I think people will step forward and let you know what's important and what isn't.
Keach. Thank you. Mr. Manager, you touched on the idea of cash flow, and that's a major concern of mine because I have little faith in the state, other than it pass through of federal dollars. But having said that, in the event of a cash flow problem, excuse me, because tax revenues aren't coming in as anticipated, I don't think the city has a line of credit, but is there a legal mechanism for us to dip into unreserved funds temporarily and then pay those back, or would that require an appropriation from council?
Mr. Manager, why don't you talk a little bit about TANs and the conversation you and I and the solicitor had about bringing that forth in June?
Mr. LeBrun would like to talk on that issue.
So the city doesn't have a typical line of credit like a business would typically have, but we have the opportunity to do something called a tax anticipation note, commonly referred to as TANs. The city has done a similar type of thing called BANs, bond anticipation notes, from the Sears Block TIF district for a couple of projects that we've had over a few years. So with the TANs, we've been working with our bond counsel, we've been working with our banks, and we've been working with our financial advisors to try to determine, does it make more sense for us to possibly look at going to banks for any cash flow needs or to the open market. We would be bringing a resolution in front of the city council authorizing the city manager and the treasurer to actually issue those TANs. We're working to determine what our cash flow needs are, projections, as we go through the remainder of this year. As we look at it right now, it looks like the tightest time that we're likely going to have is going to be in the fall, when we have to make the large payment to the county. So we have about a $12 million payment that we make to the county every December. And that's where our cash flow would tend to get pretty tight. It's all going to be dependent on our rate of tax collections. So if our rate of tax collections comes in at pretty close to where we currently are or where we normally are, which is right around that 95% range. Right now we're at 97.5% for the March payments. Typically we're at 98%, so we're not too bad. But when you look at the payments coming in for July 1st, and then you look at the payments coming in for October 1st, those are really going to be the determination of what our cash flow position is going to be, and if we're going to actually have to issue those bans. So we'll probably come to the council in the next couple of months looking for that authorization, just so that we have it on the books and ready to go if we need to pull the trigger, and then we could just get the final approval from council before we do that. But we're going to be ready to go and have agreements worked out with our banks or our financial advisors in order to try to make that all happen as quickly as possible.
Follow up, Your Honor.
Mr. LeBrun, isn't it true though that when you look at the Treasury guidelines, that any interest from the issuing of TANs is covered by the CARES Act?
There was some discussion about if the TANs were going to be covered by the CARES Act. I know there were a couple of mechanisms that tended to be pretty expensive, and they came out of, I thought it was the banking system in New York that would be underwriting those things. So I think that those would be more expensive than what we have the ability to probably borrow from either our banks or the open market.
Okay, it's my understanding that any interest on the TANs actually is.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The interest itself would be covered under the CARES Act, yes.
Thanks. Mr. Manager?
Brian stated it correctly.
Okay.
Your Honor, I do have a follow-up.
Konski, sorry.
Thanks. Mr. LeBrun, is it fair to say that if we did engage in one of these anticipatory bonds, it would have probably a negative impact on our bond rating?
I mean, I hate to say that it would have a negative impact. I think probably the impact would be because we have a lower tax rate collection. I believe, most of the rating agencies have put most municipalities, states, school districts on a negative watch right now because they're concerned about where tax payments are actually going to come in. So I think that would probably have the potential because of that tax collection rate. So if it's too low and we have to go out to bond, then it would probably be not because we had to go get the tax note, but because our tax collection rate was lower.
Set. Councilor Fennessy?
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up question on the interest on the TANs. If that's covered by the CARES Act, does that mean we would have to take action on that prior to the end of this calendar year?
I think that, we could work that out with the council to get a supplemental appropriation for what we think that interest expense is going to be for the remainder of the fiscal year. So we would come to the city council sometime, as we start to determine that we think we're going to need to actually issue the TANs and get a supplemental appropriation for that interest cost. So yes, we would have to take action. It wouldn't necessarily have to be before the end of the calendar year, but you would have to take action.
Anyone else? Okay. So right now, I think on the agenda, it takes us to moving to a non-public session. And if you give me 2 seconds. So non-public section in accordance with RSA 91A:32A to discuss compensation adjustment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to go into non-public session. Ms. LeBron, can you call the roll, please?
I'd be glad to. Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
Councilor Werner. I'll take the thumbs up. Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
And Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
I believe you all have been emailed Mr. Gaia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we may have just been starting to say what I wanted to just announce, that the councilors have received a revised Zoom invitation to non-public session. It would be in your mailbox. You would have received it from Janice about a half an hour ago.
Okay. Let's hope that works for everybody. And at this time, we'll leave the meeting and we'll see you all back here soon. Okay.
Right.
We beat them to it, didn't we, Meredith?
Okay, so I'm gonna promote, we have some counselors in the attendees.
I was here early. I was just in the wrong place. Story of my life.
We'll give you credit for being early. Promoted.
You know. Uh-oh. Right. We gotta wait for the mayor to come on.
Is the mayor lost in translation?
No, there he is. I could share my screen with you, Tom. I'm good at sharing screens now. 55%.
Hey, there was no additional email that was sent out. You got to go back to the one that was originally sent. So could somebody let Xandra know that she's looking for something that doesn't exist, I believe. Oh, now she's signing on the old one. So Jennifer, did you get some sort of new email? Because no one else did.
I got a buzzing. It went ding, like I got a new email, and it was from somebody else. So it popped up over here like it was a calendar thing. I just sent it to Gail and to Linda.
Okay.
I'm calling Xandra.
You power's done.
I think Fred wins right now for best background.
What you got?
Everybody's invited to come down to the shop for plants. I can help out.
When do you need help, Fred?
I'm talking about buying them, I'm not selling them.
Yeah, I got a tree. He's only got a plant.
But is it real?
Yes.
Can you go into the shop, Fred? Can customers come in?
We're deemed an essential business, yes. We've been open all
That's right. They were open for Mother's Day.
I know. My son had
So I
flowers.
need to put some artwork back
Fred's
here.
shop. Beautiful bouquet from the clouds I received.
Thank you.
I want you to know Tara got this tree from Fred when we first met. How's that?
Good.
You and Fred?
Haven't killed it. Yeah, Fred and I, you know.
How tall was it?
There was a desk plant back then.
It was about a foot and a half.
You may need to open up the ceiling.
It's a 180-year-old house. I don't know. It can open up on its own, I think.
You know, from Fred's perspective, that's terrible. You got to buy those every year.
One wife, buddy. One
like
wife.
when they die at least once a year.
Jeez. It was a comment about my marriage relationship.
It wasn't meant to be symbolic at all, believe me.
I thought what you were saying is that that Fred is really basically the key to your happy marriage with all this.
That's what I said. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a scary thought.
I got it.
Things are
Okay. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think we're missing Linda.
Linda and
There's Amanda.
Amanda. Yep.
Earl, is that a historic background? Is that a postcard?
Yes. Yeah, it's a painting. Yep. I've got some other ones too. I have some time on my hands.
Are you available for setting up backgrounds?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I know, Earl has great backgrounds.
Just find a picture you like and put it in a file, and I'll show you how to get to it. Just under your virtual, you can add it. But the big thing is to find a photograph you like first for a background and put it in a file where you know where it is.
I'm sending.
Mr. Mayor, we're re-forwarding to Councilor Grady Sexton and Councilor Kennison.
Hey, so when I saw Steve Shirtliff this morning, he's got a full-blown white beard.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
He is truly going to be ready for Santa Claus and Pennacook next year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Brent, when do you take over that role?
I
have to start shaving first.
Well, yeah, the shaving, sure. But I mentioned earlier, I'm working on it. I talked about the 14 snacks I had. I'm getting there.
The baton gets passed at some point.
You already do a nice tree lighting ceremony.
It was Verno, and then it was Liz. It was Dave Poulin, and Liz. She was Santa for a while, right?
Was she?
No.
No. Is she a selectman at some town in Maine? I was
York.
told.
Yeah.
York.
She is.
Yeah.
York, Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who?
Earl, did you get Linda?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to text her.
No, I did Xandra.
Oh.
No,
We just
Brian
re-forwarded.
was sending an email.
Yeah, we just re-forwarded the invite to, there we go, Xander.
So Xandra has Counselor Earl Pierce underneath her picture. That's awesome.
Emerald.
I want to switch my name too.
I actually have the power to rename people if you want. What would you like your name to be?
I would like Brent to be Santa Claus.
Okay, I'm not going to do that kind of stuff.
Put the mayor as master of the universe.
I just wanted to be Alan.
Just a reminder, we are still live if anybody else is watching.
I just checked that.
In case somebody didn't mention it before, I think it would be helpful if to have the invite sent not just as the calendar invite, but as a separate body of the email. Because I know mine's not downloading, like it still won't download the first invite I got for this call, but it did find on the other two.
Okay.
Ryan, did you send it to Amanda's Gmail account or her council?
Did you send council?
I was having the same problem as Xandra. I was like, I couldn't get it to download. It zips me out.
Linda just said she can't get in. Can you try sending the link to l.kennison@comcast.net?
Can you send it to l.kennison@comcast.net?
So Brian, one issue I have, and I think I might understand why, all my city email is forwarded to a personal email. So then I think it sees that as a forwarded message and might treat it differently.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I would suggest that you contact. I'll let Janice know, but if you could contact her also and make sure that she has that right email address, because all the emails that we got on how to send to all the counselors came from the city clerk's office. So we just want to make sure it gets changed properly at the source over there. So
Right.
I'll remember to tell her, but
Sure,
maybe a
I can take
reminder
care
from
of
you
it.
too.
That's no problem.
Amanda's here.
Yep,
coming
let
in.
me, I have to promote her. l.kennison@comcast.net.
Sorry about that.
I'm still waiting for Linda.
I felt like I was in the Hurt Locker. Oh my God.
Hey, Nate, you know any jokes?
We're live, Nate. Just.
Hey, Keith, are you in the basement?
Absolutely.
That's where you're supposed to be, right, Keith?
Yeah, I'm just hoping they unlock the door when this is over.
This is the first time I wore a tie in 2 months.
He's probably wearing golf shorts. He's got the tie and the shirt on, but
And flip-flops.
flip-flops and golf shorts on it. Have you golfed?
Linda said it's not there yet. I played yesterday.
Did you have a good time?
I had a good walk.
I should send you a link I got on a Facebook thing. It talks about how everybody's a bad golfer. It was a joke. Comedian was good.
I saw something I've never seen on the golf course yesterday. And this is when you know karma exists. So people have been concerned that the driving range isn't open. So I'm coming down the 8th hole and there's a guy on the 9th hole and he's hit like 7 drives off the 9th hole into the woods many times, hitting the trees and everything. He goes and he walks over to his cart to get another golf ball and he has ripped his shorts from the seam all the way up. You can see his black underwear. It was hysterical. And I'm like, he has no idea. He has no idea he ripped his shorts clean open. So it was a good laugh. It's funny.
Brian, can you go retrieve those balls so we can resell those?
Well, he went and picked them up in his cart. Don't worry. Got them on. He's going to use them again on 10.
It was a good thought, though.
It was.
We have sent the new email to Councilor Kennison. Hasn't bounced back to us yet.
I'll just say that it's always nice to see all of your smiling faces. Just taking the opportunity.
I will be happy when we can do this in person.
Lovely sentiment. I can hear it's getting close to bedtime here, and you can hear the noise from upstairs. I just got a text that Vampirina Dollhouse has been confiscated for the night, so let's hang out a little bit longer.
Yeah, so you don't have to listen to it, right?
I think Linda's in the other room. No? We added another person there.
No, that was
Josh.
that was somebody else. She is not an attendee. Yeah,
I saw the numbers change.
it did. That was
Wow.
our human services director.
Good thing I
There we
can't-
go. I got her promoted to panelist. She should be coming through momentarily. There we go.
What a lovely picture.
The gang's all together again. So we've had a motion to come out of non-public session. We are back into our regular session, public session. Is there a motion to seal the minutes?
Motion to seal the minutes, please.
And second,
Motion made and seconded to seal the minutes. Mr. LeBron, if you can call the roll, please.
Be glad to. Counselor Mattson.
Yes.
Counselor Nyan.
Yes.
Counselor Pierce.
yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Counselor Todd.
Yes.
Counselor Werner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Counselor Champlin.
Yes.
Counselor Fennessy.
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield.
Yes.
Counselor Keach.
Each says yes.
Counselor Kennison. Counselor Kennison.
Unmute.
Yes. I took the nod. Unmute. Okay. Counselor Kretovic.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Thank you very much. So that actually concludes this evening's agenda. I will share with you all, we're going to get the gang back together again as a finance committee on Thursday, May 21st. We will be discussing the general government or administration section of the budget, as well as the police, fire, and general services. So to help this move along, I think tonight went probably as well as could be expected, but to help it move along next time, because there's quite a bit to discuss. If you do have questions of any one of those budgets and you want to send the manager a note beforehand so he makes sure he can address those issues, I think that would be really helpful to kind of keep things flowing. But otherwise, unless we'll go once around the horn, does anybody have anything they want to share before we leave? Ms. Manager, do you have anything?
Do you have anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for everyone's patience tonight. Really appreciate it. It was good to see everybody. And we'll take a motion, Councilor Fennessy.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Yeah, we all will.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. With that, Ms. LeBron, if you can call the roll.
Be glad to. Counselor Fennessy.
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton.
Yes.
Counselor Hatfield.
Yes.
Counselor Keach.
Yes.
Counselor Kennison.
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic.
Yes.
Counselor Mattson.
Yes.
Counselor Nyan.
Yes.
Counselor Pierce.
Yes.
Counselor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Counselor Todd.
Yes.
Counselor Werner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes, and hello to Councilor Fennessy's kids.
Counselor Champlin.
Yes.
Unanimous once again.
All right, perfect. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Be well, be safe. We'll see you Thursday.
Bye now.
Good night,
Thank you. Good night.
everyone.